we really uprooted our entire lives to come here. It was daunting. And I think that probably the biggest obstacle was my immediate sense of the loss of community.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anisa Tova, and today we are diving deep with Leslie Sullivan. She's a family law attorney who's seen it all and she's done it all. She made a journey from Atlanta to Manhattan. You'll find out why. It's truly fascinating. And so she's a partner at Rower LLC. She's a devoted mother, Southern Belle, who's conquered the Big Apple. Yes, she is. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Denisa.
Yes, I've been looking forward to having this chat. So, you shared a little bit with me. So you took a break from the law to raise your children, and then you dove back in. Many people would be terrified to restart their career. So what gave you the courage to jump back in, and how did it feel to be sort of this new kid again?
Quite difficult, but quite interesting, is how it felt. And, I never wanted to take another bar exam after taking the Georgia bar exam in, I won't say exactly when, but let's just say early to mid 80s, a very long time ago. And as you mentioned, I had worked for a civil defense litigation firm in Atlanta before retiring to raise children, and then moved to Manhattan in 2013 and found myself um, sort of faced with the decision about what I was going to do with my life. And because I had been inactive with the Georgia bar, I had to take the New York State bar exam, which was quite daunting at my then age. But I did it, and I did it for many reasons. For me to be able to fulfill just another chapter of my life, and also as an example to my children due to a life circumstance change. I felt like it was really important for them to see, how somebody picks themselves back up and presses forward. So um, here we are.
How do as a Georgia peach, it was made it to called the concrete jungle. I mean, I'm not a local New Yorker either. So what would you say was like the biggest culture shock that you experienced moving to New York City?
Well, it's interesting because I had spent a fair amount of time during the summers in New York City, because one of my children actually enjoys acting. And so, I had visited, but it's a lot different visiting someplace than actually moving to this place. And I am an only child, and my mom is one of 10 children. And so all of my family is down in Georgia, mostly South Georgia. And then my children had been to the same school in Atlanta, one through from kindergarten through 8th grade, and another one from kindergarten through 5th grade. So we really uprooted our entire lives to come here. It was daunting. And I think that probably the biggest obstacle was my immediate sense of the loss of community, because when I sort of retired from the practice of law in Georgia to raise my children, I then enmeshed myself into their school and chaired probably just about every school function that could be chaired there, just to keep myself busy, and to meet people and to develop my sense of community. And so the culture shock to me was that loss of community. I love New York. I love the ability to walk out my front door and to go anywhere I want on foot, um, and not have to get in a car. And that part of it is wonderful. But the sense of, I guess, belonging is something that I had cultivated in Atlanta after having lived there for a number of years, but I found a little bit more difficult to do in New York.
Yeah, that's a courage. I mean, you either love it or you hate it. I find with New York, it's very busy, it's loud, but it has it is like this constantly buzzing energy. And it's interesting you call this sense of community. And I can see how that would be. It's almost like you are not trapped, but you are constantly surrounded by life. So it doesn't feel so remote and so isolating. I mean, you could strike a conversation so easily with just about anyone. And being in the heart of, the city, as the locals call it, I know you're a theater buff. So tell me, what is your favorite show, and why?
That's a tough question. My all-time favorite show is probably Les Mis, and I like the theme of redemption. My
Mm.
second, and it's a close second, favorite show, Hadestown, currently on Broadway. I did not know a whole lot about Greek mythology. Certainly, I studied it in South Georgia growing up. But the music, the set, the acting, the story, um, I just really love everything about it.
I'm going to throw something at you. You're a great sport, and since you love theater so much, if you were to produce a show, and you were to play a role in it, a role of a lifetime, what would that be? You think?
Um, the role of a lifetime in producing a show. That is a very tough question. I would have to say Wicked. I don't know. I think I'd have to be Elphaba and not Galinda.
Why?
Oh, because she's just got so much color, and she sort of finds herself at the end. And she has such a great journey.
Yeah, yeah. And you've had quite the journey. I'm curious. You mentioned your mom had 9 siblings. She was one of 10.
She did have 9 siblings, yes.
What what message sticks out as you were growing up from your mom, that you've sort of were able to, that has impacted you, would you say?
Two messages. One is that you are known by the company you keep. And the other is a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches.
Wow. Why those two?
Because my family and my extended family sort of imparted upon us character being more important than things. And I think that that has allowed me to navigate, difficult circumstances in my life, the move to New York City, issues that we all have with children. I think it's also enabled me to help guide my children about whom they want to be seen with and associated with. And I think that in today's climate with social media and everything being public, it's a great sort of proverb, quality, whatever you want to call it, to fall back on. And my
Mm.
grandparents, I'll say this, they did not have much. And so I think that the message to their 10 children was that you don't have to have a lot to be, a person in this world, that it's not about things, it's about who you are.
Which would explain that your resilience and being able to sort of adapt, going from one, I mean, fairly different culture to another, and having gone through transitions. That makes that would explain that. How did you even get into law? Is that something that you've wanted to do for a period of time? Was there someone who inspired you? How did you even make that choice?
Well, this is an interesting story, particularly given what I just said, because I grew up, I was the only girl on the math at my small school. And so I always thought, well, I'll just major in math. And then I realized that I didn't really, I didn't feel like I had what it to be a teacher, and I couldn't at the time figure out what I would do with math, except I decided that finance would probably be the best place for me to apply that skill. So I went to University of Georgia and I majored in finance and went through the career planning and placement office there and had a job lined up at a bank. And at the time, a lot of the major banks would hire 30 or 40 kids out of college to work in what they called management training programs, where the employees would go to credit analysis and spend 6 or 9 months in credit analysis and then float to different areas of the bank before deciding where they wanted to land. And so I had this job lined up to go to this bank in Atlanta to do that, but in the back of my mind I had this one family member who was sort of one of the town lawyers in my town,
Oh,
and he drove this really fancy car. And I decided, well, that must be a good career, because when I was
yeah.
16, he'd let me drive that really fancy car. And that was my only thought. I didn't really, other than that, know what a lawyer did. But interestingly, after having worked for 3 years at the bank, I sort of delved into it a little bit more and decided that that was really something that I wanted to do. And at the time, I then said to my parents, I am going to do this. I wish that you would help me, but I understand that you cannot. But, the thing that probably pushed me over the edge, believe it or not, was watching the movie Legal Eagles. I loved Robert Redford. So here we are. And then I never
Great
even
reason.
anticipated that I would end up in matrimonial law. So
And how was the reality different from the movie?
Uh, oh, a lot different. Certainly, well, both of my practices really, because when I practiced in Georgia, the situations were different doing civil defense litigation. They were not as personal, of course, as the situations that we now encounter in a family law practice, but certainly the movie didn't do justice to the fact that you're dealing with real people in real lives and people going through terrible crises, and having to empathize and guide and get them through one of the most awful experiences they'll ever encounter.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through many transitions, setbacks, that's just part of life. Can you think of a particular one, and don't necessarily have to share it, but an event that you had to grow through, and how has that experience shaped the way you handle cases, how you work with divorcing couples now?
Well, I think that, I had a very big life change after I moved to New York City. And that experience certainly directly, um, affects how I handle cases. Not that my personal experience is going to be the same experience as clients, but at least I've been through the process. I raised two children through the process. And so to that extent, I can sort of empathize how difficult it is to navigate.
You certainly can. And it's almost, and I'm not sure if that resonates with you, but it's almost, if there is a conflict is not comfortable. Many people shy away from it. And I think people who have actually experienced transition have the ability to sort of lean into it, put themselves, in their shoes. That doesn't mean that they will sort of enable them, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to help them to, you want to guide them to a practical resolution, and but I'm wondering if it gives you the ability to sort of lean into it, as opposed to, ooh, okay, that's uncomfortable. Um,
Well, it helps me empower people, because in
mm,
my particular instance, I had been out of the workforce for probably close to maybe 17 or so years,
wow.
and had to sort of reinvent myself. And that is not unlike many people who go through what we call the great divorce, where they've been, rocking and rolling along in their marriages, and they've raised children, and their children are now, either out of the house or off to college or in high school. And, they're now thinking, what do I do? Because my aspirations and my goals and my wishes and thoughts were going to be that I was going to be doing XYZ when I, got the children out of the house and retired. And then things change. And so I think that one thing that I hope I can do is empower people that when there are those life changes, that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of the world, that you can pick yourself up and move on, and that things can in some instances be better than you thought imaginable at the time you were going through that terrible life circumstance.
Speaking of life changes, you are a recent empty nester.
Oh, I
Um,
am.
yeah, yeah, and some parents literally fall apart when their kids leave. What is it like for you, and what's next?
I don't know what's next. I'm trying to
Uh,
figure that out. Except me time is next. And it's daunting. I mean, our jobs as parents is to raise our children to thrive and to become independent and to leave our homes. But it's different, and it's interesting because it's different even I think in a New York City apartment where the forced living is so close together than rather a home in the suburbs or outside New York, where you have space and you may not see your children as much because they may enter and exit through the basement, and I'm just making that up. But it's, you lose sort of the sense of companionship that you may share. Even though
mm,
you're the parent, you're certainly used to children being around. And then I think you also lose, to the extent, and I'm not suggesting that any of us live vicariously through our children, but to the extent we're sort of an extension of them, and that our friends are often the parents of their friends as they're growing up, that it is sort of, it is a different experience. But I'm looking forward to it because I feel like, I don't want to say my job's done because it's never really done, but they've launched. And so now that they've launched, I can sort of feel more free to embark on the things that I love to do. And that may be travel, or I love the park. I love exercise. I love Broadway shows, and do those sorts of things that um, I love volunteer work that maybe I didn't quite have as much time to do before.
Amen to that one. I'm with you. Space is good. I love how you said they launched. And yes, our job is never quite done, but now the difference is we guide them and we empower
Mhm.
them to make their independent decisions. That's right. Yeah, that's funny. Let's talk about your volunteer work. You serve meals to the homeless, right? Through Hope for New York.
Yes, Hope for New York is a wonderful organization that supports a lot of different charities, and one of the places that I volunteer is through Hope for New York, and um, meals are served on Sunday evenings, and the guests come, and we sit around the table with them after helping them with their food and sort of assist them in their needs, and it's just a lot of these people are just down on their luck, and have interesting stories. And then sometimes, I'll even see them, walking up and down the street of New York, going to a job or going to meet somebody else, or, standing outside of their apartment building. And so it's another way I feel to have a sense of community.
Big heart. Um, well, on a final note, I'm always curious about that one. Having had such a rich experience, what advice would you give to incoming attorneys?
Have a passion for the law and for the job that you're doing, because the profession is such that it's hard to ever cut off, because you're, at least in in this particular field of the law, and I think there's some others that would be similar, you're constantly helping people in need, whether it's a personal need in my business or whether it's a corporate need that somebody has in a different type of specialty of law. If you don't have the passion for it, it's not worth it. because you spend so much of your life doing it.
All consuming. That's a
Yeah,
great
it is.
advice.
And so
Wow.
you really have to like what you're doing. And I think that, when my parents were growing up, a lot of that generation, they stayed in a job because it was the thing to do, whether they liked the job or not. And I'm seeing, at least with my own children, that young people nowadays, thankfully, they really do want to pursue what their passion is rather than what the expectation is that they will do with a job. Part of me, I loved math, and I'm so fortunate that I went into finance because I use it in my job. But my mom worked for a bank. And so subliminally, I wonder, did I do that just because I didn't know any better? And, it was empowering to me even many years ago after I had worked for the bank to think, I really don't want to do this. This is what mom and dad I've chosen to do, and I hope you'll help. But if you can't, I understand. I'm still going to do it. And I think that young people, they need to feel that same desire and want, because we spend so much of our days, you know, at our work.
And this is such a perfect time to actually do this in this world that is essentially virtual, and you can start business. It doesn't have the same sort of limitations, and we are so interconnected. So it is really an amazing time to become an entrepreneur and to start thinking about. And I know it's not as easy as let me think about what I want to do, but just throwing yourself in all sorts of experiences to see what it feels like, what it's like for you, and then making some decisions, just trying things out. Yes, I think yeah, that actually, that was courageous. When I heard you describe it, your mom had a certain expectations, and then you sort of deviated. I think people take that for granted, but I think that was a pivotal point probably for you, because you could have ended up in a job that you do well, but it does not necessarily fill you up. Um, so that's inspiring. Thank you.
You're welcome. And to that point, when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be a tax lawyer. And then I got involved in moot court and decided, I think I really like court work instead. So, sort of interesting how the path sort of changed a little bit.
Yeah, and you're now done. See, you're just getting started.
No, I'm
So
not done.
yeah. I look forward to seeing what's next for you, Leslie. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and what's
You're so
behind
welcome.
that title. And I'm sure we'll have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denisa.
And to our viewers and listeners, of course, if you want to learn more about Leslie Sullivan and how to get a hold of her, then check out her bio link below. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. Follow us on all social media channels. And until next time, stay curious and inspired.